I'll do share screen. Got it.
That's
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, I'm in slideshow now.
That's it. Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start. Today I'm going to be talking about Madagascar and dependencies, the era of the French colonial allegorical group type. I've presented versions of this talk in other places, as you can see in the listing below. I'll just like to do a one-slide introduction to the group type to bring everyone up to speed. The issue was created in 1892 as the first definitive for all the French colonies. We have the figures of navigation and commerce. The colony name was printed in a separate printing. There are actually 29 different legends, but not 29 colonies, because some of the colonies double dipped, like Benin, Gulf de Benin, and Dahomey was one colony, and Diego Suarez and dependencies, and Diego Suarez was one colony. Values were from 1 centime to 1 franc for most colonies, 1 centime to 5 francs for some. And there was a full grouping of postal stationery, postcards, letter cards, and envelopes. My own personal view on the group type, and this is very prejudiced, is it was a simple and elegant solution to the problem of providing stamps for all of the French colonies, and I think of it as a truly grand idea. What about my collection? I collected the postal history of all the French entities that employed this issue. Each colony is different and has its own challenges and collecting issues. I also collected anything going on during the era of the group type's use. How far did I get in this overall endeavor? I did full exhibits on Senegal and dependencies, Indochina and the French Indochinese offices, the French Pacific colonies. I think I presented that a couple of years ago. Today, we're going to look at Madagascar and dependencies. I did a small exhibit comparing 2 small American colonies, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon and French Guiana. I did a 1-frame exhibit on Obock and the group type. That actually won a grand award at one of our Washington national shows. To the era, I did a 1-frame exhibit on the use of the due stamps of reunion for 3 weeks in 1901 because of a shortage of group type. That was a 1-frame. It won a grand award at a Baltimore show. And for that year, I entered it into the US Champion of Champions in the 1-framers, and it actually won. I was very happy with that. I also did some work on the franchise militaire stamps as used during the group type era. Unfortunately, I never got to Guadeloupe, Martinique, Ivory Coast, Benin, Dahomey, the Congo and Gabon, Reunion, and French India. I started this collection in '76, and it was sold by Spink in 2019. It was 3 catalogs, 3 sales, and about 2,700 covers, so it was quite an assembly. So what about Madagascar and dependencies? It's quite unusual in that it started with pre-existing colonies that received group type: Diego Suarez, Nasi Bay, Mayotte, and Sainte Marie de Madagascar. Then there's the Comoro Islands that received group types: Mayotte, Anjouan, Grand Comoro, and Moheli. And then finally, Madagascar became an official colony in 1896 and received its group type stamps. And by 1911, all of the above entities had been incorporated into Madagascar and dependencies. So just to give you a little overview of the colony, let's take a little walk around. Diego Suarez was a military and commercial center and a harbor. I think you can see my cursor moving up to number 1. Nasi Bay, which was over on the west coast, was an island commercial center. Mayotte was part of the Comoro Islands up here. Sainte Marie de Madagascar was a colony that I think no one wanted. Majunga was the starting point for the French campaigns in 1895, where they went down to Tananarive, the capital, which you can't see there. And that resulted in 1896 in the establishment of the colony of Madagascar. Tamatave on the east coast is the major port city. And then finally, it was the Reunion Marseille, a Marseille Reunion packet, which we see up here, that served the colony for carrying the mails from France. And you can see it first goes to the Comoro Islands, then Nosy Bay, Diego Suarez, sometimes Sainte Marie, always stopping at Tamatave. Then it goes on to Reunion and Mauritius and makes the backward journey home to France. These are the maps from Langlois and Bourselet, the famous French book on cancellations, that just show you the complexity of Madagascar. You can see Tananarive more or less in the center. That's the capital and principal city in Madagascar. And you see there's a challenge of dozens and dozens of small villages to consider when you're collecting Madagascar. So let's start in Diego Suarez and Dependencies, which received its group type in late 1892. The legend read Diego Suarez and Dependencies, and what we have in this cover is a provisional overprint on the 75 centime type de bois and a 1 franc group type stamp for a final postage of 1 franc 75 centimes, which is the 6th weight level registered. And this traveled via the Reunion Marseille packet to France. And it's quite a remarkable example of use of not only the combination of stamps, but higher values of the stamps. In 1894, they changed postal responsibilities, and Diego Suarez and Dependencies became Diego Suarez. The legend was changed. And here we have a double weight letter, 2 times 25 centimes for 15 to 30 grams, plus 25 centimes registration, to Bucharest, Romania, where it bears a Bucharest back stamp. A really remarkable destination for a letter from Madagascar. By the way, I didn't mention, I should mention, this is not going to be a comprehensive study of Madagascar group type, but an overview highlighting what I think are some of the best covers. Here's a military concession rate from Diego Suarez. There was a special concession rate of 15 centimes in lieu of the 25 centime regular rate, effective for troops on station until January 1st, 1899. The letter at the right was in the triple weight class, 35 to 45 grams, and triple concession rate, and registered for a total postage of 70 centimes. There are nice strikes of the Corps d'Armée Diego Suarez military date stamp, and there's the validation by the commander's signature and, in this case, unit cachet. And I've always considered this one of the premier covers in the collection, and that's why I'm highlighting it. And just to remind me, for the best covers in this presentation, you'll see a little red happy face someplace at the bottom of the slide. That's just to remind me. Finally, to show something from Diego Suarez under the Madagascar administration, this is a printed matter death notice in 1914, franked with Grand Comoro overprints. What's going on here? In 1912, remaining stocks of the group type were overprinted 05 and 10, the most common prevailing rates, to get rid of the stamps, okay? France was trying to run out the group type issues as other issues were replacing them. So what happened in Madagascar is stamps from all the entities that I've mentioned were valid throughout the colony if they were available. And this death notice was posted to German Tonga via Zanzibar, quite unusual destination, and quite a striking piece of postal history. And you can see it reports the death of Monsignor Courbet and says some very nice things about him. And it also bears a Zanzibar transit, so we know that it was properly used in the mail. So that's Diego. Nasi Bay was initially under Diego Suarez administration, and Diego Suarez stamps were used. And most people don't recognize that the use of Diego Suarez and dependency stamps from Nasi Bay is quite a rare entity and really desirable. Nasi Bay received its group type stamps in 1894 and then was ultimately attached to Madagascar. So what we see here is actually a 15-centime postal stationery envelope uprated to the 25-centime rate, employing the Diego Suarez and dependency stamps from Nasi Bay in 1893, transiting via the Reunion Marseille packet. So it's really quite a nice piece, although on the first pass it seems quite ordinary. Finally, we come, or not finally, but now we come to the colony of Sainte Marie de Madagascar, that I call the colony no one wanted. And when you look at its history, it was ceded to the French in 1750 by the British, abandoned by the French in 54, attached to Reunion in 1818, moved to Mayotte in 43, was a separate French colony from 53 to 1876, reattached to Reunion, reattached to Diego Suarez, and voila, in 1894 to 6, it was a separate French colony. By the way, where is it? There it is. It was a separate French colony, and it received its group type stamps. It was attached to Madagascar in 1896. It's about 200 square kilometers and probably less than 50 literate people in 1890. So mail from Sainte Marie is quite rare. What was its claim to fame? It was a home and a haven for Indian Ocean pirates. And till today, the major tourist attraction on Sainte Marie de Madagascar is the Pirate Cemetery. And you can see an old article on the pirates at the right. In terms of postal history, the ultimate item from Sainte Marie is the Sainte Marie formula card from 1888. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a philatelic fish story about this postal card. I'm not sure if fish story has the same translation in English as it does in American English. A fish story is an incredible and far-fetched journey. The Sainte Marie formula postcards were created to advise the arrival of mail in Sainte Marie. The use is extremely rare. 10, 15 years ago, unused examples of this card sold at about $500 a copy. There's one used example with a 10-centime type de bois, and there are probably today 4 examples with 5-centime group types. This one was used on September 27, 1896, on an advisory of the arrival of a letter in Sainte Marie, and it's one of the major rarities in group type. And here's a close-up of the postcard with all the various writings on it. It's a standard formula postcard, and when you turn it over, you see it's set up to advise people of the arrival of mail in Sainte Marie and to come in and collect their mail. So what about the fish story? I learned about these postcards from a letter, an article in the French and Colonies Philatelist in the U.S. that was written by Bob Stone, who was sort of a father figure in French colonies collecting in the United States at the time, and he was very much my mentor. And he did a very short article on this with a copy of a card that he picked up in a French auction. So I decided I would love to have one of these in my group type collection, and began waiting for one to show up. And finally, one showed up in a Jamais sale in 1987. Jamais was selling the Debus collection, which he sold over 3 sales. And one of the sales had a postcard very similar to this one. Jamais estimated it at $1,000, about 5,000 francs in those days, with a starting bid of $200. So I thought, okay, I'll bid $1,050. Maybe I'll get a chance to win this lot. And when the prices came back, I wasn't even a player in the game. it sold for $2,000, and so I was bidding half the final price, and I was quite depressed about the whole situation. However, in New York at the time, there was a firm called J&H Stallo, and the Stallo firm had a big auction every month, 2,000 to 3,000 lots worldwide, and an auxiliary mail sale of maybe 5,000 to 10,000 lots a month in a mail sale with short descriptions. And one day I got my gold medal catalog and opened it up, got to Sainte Marie, and it said Sainte Marie de Madagascar postcard, 5 centime franking, estimate $25. No pictures. I mean, there were so many lots, maybe a couple of hundred were pictured, but there was no picture of the lot. So I wondered if this was a normal postal card, you know, with a picture, in which case it would be about $100 item, or was it the formula card? My first thought was to call them up, but then I figured, oh, if I called them up, I'd just be apprising them of possibly something of value. So since I valued a regular postcard, picture postcard at $100, I sent in a bid of $85 and hoped for the best. And my bid went in. 2 weeks later, my lots came back. I looked at the invoice, and indeed, I got the lot for $85, my full price. I think I was the only bidder, and Stallo in those days just took your bid at top value. And when I got to the that lot in my stack of winnings, it was this formula card. So I had failed to get it at $1,050. It sold for $2,000, and now I got one for $85. Wow. So that's my fish story. There's one addendum to it, and I haven't shown this for years and years and years. Collecting the group type is tremendously complicated. You're going to end up with a lot of material. There's a lot of information on that material. And in 1985, I started a very, very simple DOS-level database for my group type collection, where I could put all sorts of information of value, information to be searched and studied, which I still use today, even though I've gotten rid of the collection. I still do a lot of follow-up work, and just one entry took 3 screens of material. You can see I paid $85 for the postcard. I bought it in March of '89 from Gold Medal. I have the addressee. I have some comments, and in the last screen, I have the coding to go back to scanned images in a different program, in a different database. Today, all of this, of course, is incorporated in modern databases, but I can't transfer this without great problems. So I just wanted to stress the importance and usefulness of databases when you collect. Back to Sainte Marie, here's an avis de réception of 10 centime rate, a use of the Anjouan 1912 overprint. This is when Madagascar was the overall colony. This is on a form created specifically for Madagascar rather than use of a French standard avis de réception. And it's possibly the only recorded example from Sainte Marie de Madagascar. And you can see it's stamp of Anjouan, which is proper. And then inside it has been fully filled out with all the information from Sainte Marie, and then the reception information in Tamatave before it was mailed back. As I noted, I collect non-group type items, okay, the era. That's what this falls under. And this could be unfranked, underpaid due letters, military franchise letters, use of the franchise militaire stamps, government franchise letters, use of illegal stamps, uses fiscal stamps, other form of payment like the reunion use of due stamps, or in Guadeloupe, they prepaid in cash when they had a shortage of group types. And an item I got for the Sainte Marie part of the collection was a postage due letter, posted September 2nd, 1904. This is unpaid local letter, an unpaid local letter, double weight, 15 to 30 grams, which should have had 30 centimes, 2 times 15 centimes postage, but it didn't. So it was charged 60 centimes due with the T60 applied in manuscript. And to my knowledge, it's the only recorded postage due letter from Sainte-Marie with the Duval postage due stamp. Interestingly, it's addressed to Dr. A. Volzkov. Dr. Volzkov, Professor Volzkov, was a famous German zoologist from Berlin who gathered scientific samples, animal, plant, and mineral, for fellow scientists in Europe, and he used to send them back to them in Europe. I actually went and read his 1905 publication in a zoology journal, and it notes he departed Sainte-Marie de Madagascar to go to Tamatave to go home to Germany on the evening of September 2nd, 1904. So here I'm able to place the addressee in Sainte-Marie on that date, just before he went home. There's more to this story, but that's for another time. So let's go to the Comoro Islands, Mayotte, Anjouan, Grand Comoro, and Mahele. Originally, they were administered by Diego Suarez. Then they were administered by Mayotte. And in 1911, everything was put under Madagascar Dependencies. And you can see the 4 Comoro Islands here, along with Diego Suarez, Nasibe, and Majunga. From Mayotte, the principal village for Mayotte mail is Dzaoudzi, and most of the mail comes from there. Here's a letter from the tiny village of Mamotsu in 1897 at the 25 centime French community rate. It's quite rare and quite pleasing cover. You can see a nice combination of group types, good strike of the date stamp, the Reunion Marseille Transit. So it's really a nice, quite rare example of mail from this tiny Comoro island. Here's somebody, actually a major commercial firm, attempted to use from Dzaoudzi a provisional issue from the Protectorate of Madagascar. Madagascar was a protectorate in 1890, in this part of 1896. It was August, it became a colony. And the sender attempted to use that provisional Madagascar stamp. The sender was an established commercial firm in Madagascar, but the stamp was not valid in Mayotte, as Mayotte had no postal association with Madagascar at this time. So the stamp was rejected by the local post office in the standard French method, and on arrival in Lyon, it was charged 50 centimes due. And although it's a little on the ratty side, it's still quite a striking example of non-use of the group type and rejection of the stamp that was chosen. From Anjouan, I had actually received its group type in 1892. It was administered as a protectorate and then a colony by Mayotte. This is rare use of the Anjouan protectorate octagonal date stamp on a registered letter to Metz, 50 centimes to 25 postage, 25 registration, transited via the Reunion Marseille package. It doesn't have a registry strike that was somehow left out, but at the upper left, I believe that's 350, that's a registry number. So I'm quite certain it was registered and it did travel through the mail as it has a Metz back stamp. This is quite a rarity, Anjouan's single use of the 45 centime stamp. 8 colonies received the 45 centime group type stamp in 1906. Others did not need it as they already had new pictorial issues. The 45 centime stamp prepaid the double weight, 2 times 10 centimes, registered 25 centimes French community rate. There are 6 single known usages of the 45 centime stamps on cover. 4 are from French Oceania and 2 are from the Comoro Islands, and that's it. The stamp of Mayotte was valuable in Anjouan, as Anjouan was administered in Mayotte, and this is the only recorded example of the use of the single 45 centime Anjouan stamp for the proper registry rate. And Going over to Grand Comoro received its group type stamps in 1897. This is a French community rate of 15 centimes, posted during 1905 on a rather ratty letter to Paris. And why am I showing it to you as a premier cover from Grand Comoro? Well, mail from Grand Comoro traveled by local fishing vessel to Mayotte to meet the French packet. The vessel carrying this piece of mail, this letter, sank, but the mail was recovered and sent on to destination. And the ships used for the transit of the mails were the local boutras, as they're called, single mast sailing ships that plied the Madagascar waters. And when you turn this one over, you see some nice transit cachet of the industry originating the letter. And then at the left, in French, the letter was received in damaged condition, a shipwreck of a boutre from Grand Comoro, okay, a special cachet created just for these letters to explain why they were arriving in such poor condition. There are probably 4 examples known about that today. Moheli was administered by Mayotte. It did not receive group type stamps until 1906, although the post office was opened much earlier. Stamps of other Comoro Islands were used. And what we have here is a double weight local letter, 2 times 15 centimes, from Moheli via Grand Comoro to Patsy, a plantation in Anjouan. And to me, what's really nice about this is you have stamps of Anjouan, a transit mark from Grand Comoro, and the stamps are canceled with the Moheli date stamp, which mentions Mayotte. So we have one cover which shows something from all 4 Comoro Islands on that one cover. Also from Moheli is a military franchise letter from 1903, franchise applied to troops in combat. It's got the Mayotte and Dependencies Moheli date stamp, and possibly the only recorded franchise letter from Moheli. So you can see that's also quite a nice item. And finally, in 1896, August, the colony of Madagascar Dependencies was declared. French campaigns, which began in Majunga to pacify ended up in Tananarive, and the colony was created, and French campaigns continued for many, many years to take over the whole colony. Local entities like Diego Suarez and Nasi Bay were placed under Madagascar administration, and the stamps from those entities were used interchangeably. And then in 1911, the Comoro Islands were added, and its stamps were used interchangeably amongst all of the dependencies of Madagascar. My earliest recorded use of a Madagascar group type stamp, or not a Madagascar group type stamp, but a use of a group type stamp from Madagascar, is this 5 centime stamp from Reunion that was privately carried to and used from the military post office at Majunga. It was used to prepay the 5 centime printed matter rate to France on 25th of November, 1895. And it bears the military post office date stamp, Trésor Postales Armées, with the number 2, which was used in Majunga. That's the military postmaster of Majunga. And someone, probably a local citizen, had available to him a Reunion stamp, which they accepted at the post office, and it went on to Bellac in France, and it does have a proper back stamp, so it did travel through the mail. Really remarkable piece of postal history. Some items from Tananarive now. Here's a declared value letter where the stamps prepay postage, insurance, and registration. And that's all confirmed by the chargé hand stamp and the declared value endorsement at the top. The cachet on the reverse is the key to the rate, and this was posted on March 27th, 1900. And if we look at that cachet on the back, you see the letter weighed 19.8 grams. That second weight level, it had 4 wax seals that were red with the initials HG, security initials, impressed into them. And so the postage based on the second weight level is 30 centimes, registration 25, and the insurance was 4 francs for a total rate of 4 francs 55 centimes. quite spectacular. And maybe the antithesis to that cover is this one from Tananarive to Mananjary. It's a native letter posted at the 5 centime printed matter rate from Tananarive on April 25th, 1907 to the village of Mananjary. However, the addressee in Mananjary could not be found. So and you should note the 5 centime printed matter rate in Madagascar did not pay for forwarding or returning to sender. So the hand stamps of unknown and return to sender were applied in Mananjary, and then in blue, it received a Mananjary T in triangle for due and an insufficiently franking hand stamp. On arrival in Tananarive, it was treated as an unpaid 5 centime printed matter rate due 10 centimes payment for the penalty for not franking. And it took 6 months for all of this to transpire if you trace it through the dates. Just quite a remarkable printed matter letter. Here's fiscal use from Tananarive. Fiscal use on an 1897 document where you have a 10 centime group type stamp, which gets it into my collection, and the 50 centime protectorate issue. Dustin, who wrote the book on French colonial revenue usage, records the use of postage stamps as revenue stamps in Madagascar, but he does not show any, and this is a very early example. So the question came up, what's written on this, okay? And it's in the local language of Madagascar, so I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. So I sent it to the Embassy of the Republic of Madagascar in Washington for translation. And I sent it at 1 o'clock one afternoon, and 2 o'clock, the translation came back. Absolutely wonderful response. And it reads, March 14th, 1897, Ankazobe, and then a complicated name of the fellow pictured, who I will call Randy. Randy was allowed to procure for himself a letter from the administration, stamped herein, given his good deeds towards the French government, as he did not join the insurrection by the Vanazongo, which took place in the month of June 14, 1896, but he followed the French rules. And it's signed Said Rakoto, 10 honors, that's a government ranking, Governor General Interim of Vanazongo. So when the French were coming down from Majunga with their military campaign in 1896, Randy remained loyal to French interests and was given this document to carry around to prove that he was a French loyalist. And if we zoom in, we can still make out the image of Randy, despite all the intervening years. Quite an interesting item of Madagascar postal history. Madagascar had an extensive telegraph system, and you could send mail from the interior. You could send mail from post office to post office by telegram to speed it up, or you could send mail from the interior to major cities for transit to further destinations. And here's a telegram letter that was posted from the interior to Tamatave, where it was transcribed and forwarded, to the firm in Lyon that I previously mentioned at the 50 centime registered rate. I have many examples of this and could give a short talk on telegram mail. Here's from Tamatave, the port city, a parcel tag. Parcel tags are not normally seen as they were kept by the arrival post offices. This example from 1915 was posted as at the 1 franc 35 centime registered parcel rate, 25 centimes registration, 1 franc 10 for the parcel charge, with use of the Anjouan 0515 1912 overprints, plus a Zebu issue, the first local issue of Madagascar, first issue of Madagascar, proper issue of the colony. And here we see from the business portion of the tag, 505 overprints, and it's addressed to a addressee in Reunion. And when we turn it over, a block of 18 of the 05 overprint, where the plate holding the numbers together had a major fault, and we end up with 8 varieties of the overprint on this one item. So it's not only a very desirable parcel tag, but it's got a spectacular variety of the overprint on the reverse. From the Majunga office, here's a postcard that was canceled at the telegraph, in the telegraph portion of the office. And you can see that canceled there. It's the only one I've seen, and you can see the T23 indicating our telegraph office. Now we get to the Madagascar small village use. As I said, Madagascar had 75 small villages during the era of the group types use. Many were opened by the military and then converted to civilian offices. Often the transition was a little shaky, and my collection illustrated the largest holding of Madagascar small village group type ever assembled. And this letter is from the village of Befarona, which was an office in transition from a military to a civilian post office. On December 7th, 1897, the postal devices were not yet available. They had a stamp. The stamp was unusually pen canceled. And then they added in the manuscript large R, number 78, Befarona, 712 to get the date. The Camford R came in transit. It does bear a Nancy backstamp. So it did travel through the mails. Quite an interesting piece. Along the same line, one from Ampani, posted on January 17, 1905. Again, postal devices not available. So manuscript cancels and a manuscript date stamp were created for the processing of this letter, which went on the Reunion Marseille packet. That's probably where it also got the Camford R. Again, nice early usage from post offices that were in transit. Mananjary had a provisional 3-ring cancellation. And here's a postcard from Mananjary with a date line on the reverse of March 11th, Mananjary, a date line from Mananjary on the reverse to Germany, use of that provisional 3-ring cancel with no indications of the town or village or city of origin. Possibly 4 or 5 copies of this date stamp have been recorded. Maybe Loic will have some further comments on that in a future talk. However, here's another interesting example with that provisional cancellation from Mananjary. It's a local printed matter rate of 5 centimes from Tamatave that was mailed to Tamatave but forwarded to Mananjary. But the forwarding was not covered under a normal printed matter handling. But it was charged 20 centimes due with the provisional Madagascar due stamp, which is quite rare on properly used cover. The stamp was canceled by the Mananjary provisional 3-ring cancel, and that represents a unique combination. However, forwarding should have required only 10 centimes due, and this would have been treated as unpaid printed matter at 2 times 5 centimes. So apparently the contents had some violation of the printed matter regulations, and the letter was actually treated as a 15 centime rate letter, credited for 5 centimes and charged 2 times the 10 centimes due. And as far as I know, this is the only example of the proper provisional use of these Madagascar overprint Duval date stamps, Duval postage due stamps. And you can see it's nicely tied via the Mananjary 3-ring cancellation. Here's a standard small village letter from Ansarabe to Khartoum. It was posted from that small village in 1908, registered overseas rate, and the route is nicely recorded in the back stamps. So here's the front. It's actually quite a pleasant item. You notice the image on the 50 centime is a little blurry and hard to see, and that's characteristic of the 50 centime. Apparently, at one point, the plate became quite dirty and was in need of cleaning. When we turn this over, it's actually quite spectacular. The letter transited via Tananarive, where it was placed in a mailbag, which came out of the mails where the French packet called, when the French packet called in Suez. It was then put on transport to the post office at Aswan, where it was put on the Shalal Halfa railroad line to get to Khartoum. And all of this is very, very beautifully recorded on the reverse of the envelope. We come to the Madagascar numeral cancellations. These were instituted in 1899 to aid in the setup of the new post offices to provide provisional postmarks. It often took months to get these to get the old new postmarks with the town names to the new Madagascar post offices. So they instituted these numeral cancels in two styles. And this was so successful in Madagascar that it was used from 1899 to 1939. And the challenge, of course, is to associate a number and a post office and the date of use by the information contained on the item. And by collection was the basis of much new information for the literature that back then was sent to Dr. Jacques Desnoux, who was the keeper of the numeral date stamp literature, and he's published all of this information in the Call for a Bulletin. The numeral 1 cancel herein is used in January 13th, 1901, from the village of Manjacandriana at the 15 centime French community rate. And we know that from, you can see a very, very light violet, probably somewhat of some sort of military hand stamp that didn't take because of the lack of ink, but somebody has written in that these are the troops from the province of Manjacandriana. So we know it's being used from there, and then we get the year from the transit on the reverse. Here's an example of the Madagascar numeral 28 cancel used from the office of Betroka, 1901, based on the description at the lower left. It's a declared value letter, 500 francs at 95 centime postage. And interestingly, they didn't have a declared value cachet, so they created one by manuscript. So here you can clearly see the Betroka at the lower left, so we know where it originates. And then we turn it over, and there's the declared value cachet, double weight, 5 wax seals, color of red with initial CB pressed into them, plus some nice transits. Madagascar also had a very limited use of letter cancels. They were used at the numeral cancels, but they're extremely rare, with probably less than 10 examples recorded. People just had old date stamps and they pulled away a lot of the letters, leaving but 2 to form a provisional cancel. A, B, R, I, T, S, N, T are known, and the one at the right is the only recorded copy for the AB date stamp. The origin is uncertain, but quite obviously it's from area where there were Norwegians. There were small Norwegian populations within Madagascar at this time. There was also some military postal stationery, which was unique to the expeditionary forces in Madagascar. Philatelic uses are extremely common. This is a nice example of the letter card used from Majunga to Saigon with a Saigon transit and a full message inside. So it's not a philatelic piece, but is actually a postally used piece. Here's an ordinary 10 centime postcard from Majunga. Normally these would be 10 or 20 bucks a piece, but this one has transits via Zanzibar, Lorenzo marks, and an arrival in Durban, Natal, a very nice destination. And just to add something extra to the soup and après départ, too late auxiliary hand stamp on it. So it becomes quite a nice piece of Madagascar postal history. Here's use of group type stamps as provisional postage due stamps, an unpaid letter from France, 1913. So that's the 10 centime rate. And it was properly charged, it was struck T in triangle in France. And it was charged 20 centimes due on arrival in Manjacandriana, employing a 10 centime Madagascar due stamp and 2 5 centime 1912 overprints from Anjouan as provisional due stamps. And you can see it's to the Vernier family, who were retired missionaries from French Oceania, who spent their retirement in Madagascar. Here's unusual use, unusual collection of postage due, where there was a shortage of postage due stamps on a local letter from Diego Suarez on January 28, 1907. This is a double weight letter, 20 centimes was required for the postage, was only prepaid at 14 with 6 due. There was a shortage of due stamps, so a telegraph receipt was used to collect the 12 centimes postage due from the addressee. And you can see that receipt. The letter is being taxed at 12 centimes because of the shortage of postage due stamps. Very, very nice and unusual combination of items. And this is just to show you use of an FM stamp. This is from the Madagascar area. It was posted on the Reunion Marseille packet directly, so it was canceled on board. It's from the expeditionary forces in Madagascar, Service à la Mer. Nice example of that. Here's Paquebot Mail from Tuliar on the west coast of Madagascar, put on a commercial ship, which called first at Durban. So it got the date stamp of Durban plus the Paquebot hand stamps of Durban. It's a 25 centime rate to Switzerland, a proper rate. And these Paquebot hand stamps are not recorded in any of the volumes, the collections of Paquebot hand stamps that I have for following this material. And then we come to a period that I call bisectomania. Bisectomania infects the colony of Madagascar. Early 1904, they were bisecting everything in Madagascar. And what happened, I think, there was a genuine shortage of certain stamps at the post office in Diego Suarez, and they authorized the use of bisects with a special cachet announcing the shortage of stamps. And you actually see legitimate usage of the bisects. The top one at the top right is on a 15 centime rate letter to Reunion, and it's back stamped. The one on the left is a bisect of the 30 with a 40. So that's a 55 centime double rate local registered letter. That's proper. But by the time we get to the third one, you can see bisectomania is beginning to infect the colony, and we only have bisects. And I think if you look carefully, the 30 centime bisect at the right is actually the mate of one of the bisected pair at the left. I mean, they were just doing crazy things. Many post offices recognized bisects as a way of generating revenue. They started bisecting their stamps, and some of these bisected covers go for thousands of dollars. So I never incorporated them into my letter. I did throw a few interesting ones. And one is a bisect of the 4 centime stamp on a wrapper, and another is a bisect of the 15 centime stamp on a printed matter rate of 5 centimes. But it was not accepted by the post office in Europe.
And Ed, if I may, on those, you have to be really careful, because there is a lot of those bisects that were produced much later using, similar cancels, but let's say the 4 of the 04 is slightly different, and so that's a little bit of a hint. So there is a lot of, I'm going to say, forgery, even though they use the real stamps and probably some older cancel from the post office, but they were done way after the period of March 1904. So there's a lot of care to be had with those.
Yes, well, that's why I never went beyond letters like this, except the two at the right have other importance to me. Namely, they were to Professor Volskov, so I was following his correspondence in Madagascar. But no, I never bid on these. I never spent a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't like them either.
And you're going to tell us more about them, right?
Not so much about those, I hope.
Okay. So now we come to the 1921 overprints. In 1921, remainders 75 centimes and 5 franc group types are overprinted, 60 centimes and 1 franc to conform to registered French community and registered overseas rates. These are the last group type overprints created by any of the colonies. Most group type usage ceased around World War I. This is an example of the inverted 60 on a local registered letter. And you can see it's from Anjouan to Anjouan. And if you look at the stamp closely, you see nice use of the inverted overprint. And then this is a 1938 airmail letter, which shows exceptionally late usage of the 1921 overprints on the 5 franc stamp. This is possibly the latest recorded seemingly proper use of group type stamps from a French colony. It's from a small village to Tréport in France. It is properly back stamped. The Madagascar 1 franc 50 is the normal postage for a registered letter from Madagascar to France. And I believe the 4 francs is the airmail surcharge for transporting this letter by air. So that's my story for today. What we have here is sunset at Sainte Marie. We're looking west at the setting sun. And if you look very, very hard and close at the further shoreline, you can see the colony of Madagascar also in the sunset. But before I leave you, I've got to tell you a little bit about things to come. I'm going to be speaking in a while again on another aspect of my collection. This silver spoon figures prominently. So Grabowski is going to be showing silver spoons in philatelic lectures. And what I'll be talking about next time is philately and international mail order fraud, the success of Professor A. Victor Segno and his American Institute of Mentalism in the European African colonies. This is going to be printed in the annual of the European Academy of Philately for 2023. It'll come out in September. If you're interested in mail order fraud, you might find this enjoyable. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention. I would appreciate any comments, questions, whatever, and thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ed. That was a tour de force, that's for sure. Okay, I'll stop recording. If anybody's got any questions, they will need to unmute themselves and they can ask any questions they wish.
Oh, Ed, that's a beautiful